Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome back to another World of Tanks tank review. This time we're looking at the T20, which you can see here, but just before we get into that, for those who are not aware, so I ground through the Battle Pass, at the Season 4 of it, I think it was, for 3 months. And I thought it would be fine when I thought it was just the first 50 stages. It was all 150, but anyway. And when you've got a small person, that's actually quite an arduous grind, because you can't spend loads of time any particular day. You're basically doing it for an hour a day, every day, and it actually ends up being quite a grind, and by the time you get toward the latter half of it, you really want it to be over. Anyway, I did that. We went on, we had a short holiday, basically. Come back, and the next season has kicked off already. They can't have left it more than 2 weeks. Like, damn, I'm not doing this. Anyway, sorry, just for anyone who's not aware, if you're interested in the next season, the Battle Pass is already kicked off. So, back to the T20. That's what this video is going to be about. You can see the tank here. It's a weird one because this is the Tier 7 American medium tank, of course, the tech tree one. And I've bought, sold, rebought all over. I keep rebuying this tank all over the damn place because this is one of the first tanks I had in the game. And actually, if you go back and you look at some of my very early YouTube videos, you can go and see some of my cringe-worthy T20 gameplay from back in 2014, I think it was. It was not as good as it is now. Well, hopefully, I think it's gotten better. Maybe you disagree. Anyway, the T20. For those who are not aware, this is a little bit of an odd duck in the American tech tree. Don't know why I clicked on that. So if you look at the American tech tree overall, and you focus on the medium tanks, and you come over here, and you go up here, and you go up here. So the reason that I say the T20 is a bit of an odd duck is that prior to the complete reshuffle of the tech tree here, it was, if memory serves, the only Tier 3 or higher tech tree medium tank in the American tree. Well, in the American medium line, let's discount the autoloaders for now, that wasn't mass produced. Now, of course, we've got the T6 medium, which sort of throws that out a little bit. But basically, you go through and like the Sherman was mass produced, another version of the Sherman mass produced, Pershing, Patton's, all mass produced, but the T20 wasn't. So what was it? Well, basically, as soon as the Sherman design was up and running and the American industry was churning them out by the thousand, there was work started on a replacement for it, and that became the T20, and subsequently, tanks like the T21, the T23, the T25. This whole series of development was designed to replace the Sherman. And essentially, the idea of the T20 was that it would have a 76mm gun instead of the 75mm gun that the Sherman came with, and just be a sort of incremental upgrade. It's probably been a bit more mobile, but an incremental upgrade over the Sherman. And the general response from the American army was they took one look at it and they went, why? Why would we bother? You've got a tank that offers a small improvement in firepower, or in anti-tank firepower. Let's not talk about the HE round, because then it starts getting more complicated. The shorter barreled 75mm gun on the Sherman probably had a higher performing HE round, because generally speaking higher velocity guns have a worse performing HE round because you need thicker shell casings. And anyway, better anti-tank firepower, but the troops weren't crying for the Sherman to be better at killing tanks as a general rule of thumb. Remember, generally speaking, a tank will be engaging a pillbox or a machine gun nest or something like that. You need a decent HE round. So the American military was like, why would we bother with this? What's the point? You don't offer us a significant improvement over what we've already got. And in order to adopt your new proposed vehicle, we would have to change our logistics, our infrastructure that is already set up to support the Sherman. And there wasn't really an answer to that. And so this whole series of tanks essentially never entered mass production. I think the variant that the most were made of was the T23. They made a couple of hundred of those, bearing in mind there were something like 50, 60, 70,000 Shermans made, something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but it's tens of thousands. They made a couple of hundred of T23s. Now, it's not as if the entire, all this development went nowhere. It did ultimately lead, incrementally, to a tank that did enter production, the M26 Pershing. You got the T20, the T21, T22, T23. I'm not sure if there was a T24. Haven't seen reference to one. T25, T26, and then you would get the M26 Pershing. But this tank in particular, the T20, nah, I think there were 2, maybe 3 sort of pilot vehicles that were made, and that was about it. It still had, depending on which version you were looking at, had a 75 or a 76mm gun, and the Sherman's got a 75mm gun. So maybe an incremental improvement in firepower. There were problems with the transmission, bit leaky, just didn't have the reliability of the Sherman, and like I say, so the American military's response was, nah, we're good, thanks. Save your time and effort. Sherman's fine. So let's have a look at where the T20 falls statistically then. And in this comparison, we've got the T20 in the left-hand column, the Comet in the second column, because people often seem to compare the two, the Leo in the third column, and the Soviet T-43 in the fourth column. So, straight off the bat, the base DPM on the T20 is abysmal. 1,597.98, fine, is awful. That is without equipment or anything. That is a massive step down from the Easy 8 at Tier 6. Just for the sake of comparison, the Comet is packing around about an extra 650 DPM over the T20. It's ridiculous. The T43 has about 2,000 DPM, which isn't amazing, but it's still 400 more than the T20's got, and the Leo, which in this comparison, for the record, I've given the bigger gun, for the sake of variety. So this is the 300 Alpha 105, I think it is, millimeter gun. It's got higher DPM than the T20 and higher alpha damage. So the T20's DPM is atrocious. I just want to emphasize that. Basic penetration, the nominal penetration of the T20 is 160. For comparison, it's 148 with the Comet, 155 with the Leo, and 144 with the T43. Interestingly, though, this is something that Tanks.gg seems to have put in fairly recently. They've put in, so that nominal penetration is at 100 meter distance. They've put in the penetration at 500 meter distance, so at long range. And actually, despite the fact that the T20 has higher penetration than the Comet at short range, by the time you get out to 500 meters, the T20 loses penetration faster. So you're actually down at 135 pen at 500 meters, whereas the Comet gets 138. The Leo, it's a similar kind of story, lower pen at close range, but higher at longer range, you're down to 142, and the T43, I'm afraid, gets the poor end of that stick in both instances. Average damage is 240, which for a Tier 7 medium tank is pretty respectable in this comparison. Only the Leo beats it, and the Leo is a more recent tank. Back in the day, the T20's 240 alpha damage was very nice indeed, and even to this day is still pretty good. Module damage of 122 is about right. It's a 90mm gun at the end of the day, and module damage is just based off the gun caliber. We've talked about, we could specifically mention the fact that the rate of fire on this gun is very, very low. A base reload of 9 seconds is rubbish, but the bottom line is the DPM sucks. Shell velocity of 853 is fine, nothing special, nothing to get excited about. But because this thing has 240 alpha damage, its 48 shells actually mean it has a pretty high potential damage. You're not going to run out of ammunition in this thing in the sort of way that you might do in something like the T-43 or the Comet. Those things, especially because they fire so quickly, can burn through the ammunition very quickly, and you can find yourself in a dubious situation with regard to your ammo. Gun handling is a bit of an interesting case. T20's got the same aim time as the Comet and the T43, but better gun handling than either of those machines. Better dispersions on the move, traverse, etc. What's weird is that it also has better dispersion after firing. So the reticle blooms out less after firing the gun compared with the Comet or the T43, despite the fact that it also has a larger caliber gun. Go figure. So what that means is that the T20 is actually relatively good at taking shots on the move. Now, the Leo actually has better gun handling than the T20, so it's even better at firing on the move. However, if you look at the raw dispersion value, i.e. the base accuracy, the smallest size of the aiming reticule, the T20 is 0.36, which isn't great, but it isn't absolutely atrocious. The Comet is the best in this comparison, the T43 is fine. The Leo is 0.4. So what that means is that the Leo, compared to the T20, the bloom values are better, however the T20's aiming circle will start off smaller. And in the case of the Comet, for example, the bloom values are worse, but again, the aiming reticule is smaller than the T20. The thing that really hurts the Comet, and to be fair, the T43 as well, the T43 as well, is that bloom after firing. That's really quite painful. Gun elevation of 25 degrees is, fine, it's decent. It's not poor enough that you feel it as being painful. Gun depression of 10 degrees is also nice to have. Not as good as the Comet's 12 degrees, but same as the Leo in this comparison, and better than the T43, which of course only gets 8, which is not awful, but better is better. 56 km an hour top speed limit is actually pretty good, and in this comparison only the Leo is better. Honestly, to get much more than that, you're starting to have to look at tanks with around about 60 km an hour forward speed limit, and you start looking at light tanks. This is a pretty quick medium tank, if we're going to be honest. Reverse speed of 20 km an hour is nice to have. 560 horsepower engine on air, let's call it a 31-ton tank, gives you over 19 horsepower per ton, which is really nice to have. This is definitely a mobile medium tank, which is great, frankly. And in this comparison, actually, it has the best ground resistances as well, overall. So you've got technically in this comparison, it's the third best power to weight ratio, but it's very similar to the Leo, and the Comet isn't that much better. Whereas the T43 is somewhat worse than the others. But combine that with the best terrain resistances, and that means that you're definitely respectably mobile. This is a mobile tank, which is, it's going to be comfortable to move around the battlefield in. Armour, this is where the story starts getting a little bit dubious. We're going to have a look at the armour more in a moment. Don't worry about that 0, that's incorrect. There isn't an armour hole on the side of the turret. But the armour on this tank is poor. In fact, it's get worried about being penned by HE poor. You want to not be hit. You don't want to be taking a hit in this thing if you can avoid it. 1100 hit points is fine. Nothing to get excited about. Camo-wise, it does, however, have the best camouflage in this comparison. The T20 is quite a low-profile tank. And the long and the short of that is your camo is pretty good. So, yay. You're quite sneaky. And so when I come on to talk about crew skills, we'll compare, or we'll consider whether you want repairs or camouflage on this tank. Camo crew skill is definitely an option. And if you've got a more skilled crew, I would definitely recommend taking camo, but you may even want to prioritise it over repairs. Just something to think about, and I'll allude to later on as well. So let's have a quick look at the armour profile on this thing. So here's the armour on the tank, and this is one of those where you might look at the colours on the armour model, whatnot, and go, that looks alright. Nice strong turret, because it's coloured red, but remember, on this colour scale, red only means it's got about 90mm of armour. The armour on this tank is really not very good. So, What are we looking at? Rear of the thing, you've 38, 26. You can be penned in the rear of this tank by sort of 75, 76mm HE, of which there is plenty at this tier. Side, well, I mean, it's a slightly better story, but you can still be penetrated by, what, 90, 105mm HE. Front, oh, well, you might not get penetrated by, like, you'd have to have quite a large caliber gun in order to penetrate this frontally with HE, or get quite lucky, but oh, the armour is not good. If we try and use this thing's full gun depression, what are we going to get out of this? Well, our upper front plate is still not going to get above 100mm of effective armour, and it's not an auto bounce angle, so that isn't bouncing diddly. Gun there, like, no. Turret, right, if we're using all of our gun depression, we can get regions of our turret that are over 120mm thick. Whoop-de-doop. Oh, and around the gun, I guess, the gun mantler, you can get 200 in places. The long and the short of it is the armour on this tank sucks. Do not rely on it. So, let's talk things like crew skills, equipment, and all that good stuff. Right, so, crew skills. Nothing going to be too surprising here. You can see I've got a fairly respectable crew going on. This is Homelander and friends who are in here. So I've got Brothers in Arms, I've got Sixth Sense, I've got Repairs, and so on and so forth. Skills that you want to prioritise in this tank. Sixth Sense, obviously, because it's Sixth Sense, of course you want it. Brothers in Arms is really nice to have. This is one of those tanks where you might want to consider prioritising camo over repairs. I'm not sure I'd actually recommend it, but it's something you might want to consider because your armour sucks. So you really don't want to be getting shot in the first place. And actually, truth be told, you know, your base camouflage isn't terrible. But broadly speaking, I would say your standard good stuff in medium tanks. It is worth noting that even with my setup, I'm sitting at 451 meters view range, and that's with coated optics, Brothers in Arms, and not fully maxed out situational awareness. I haven't got recon yet on this thing, so that would of course improve the view range even more. Nice to have that decent base view range. So crew skills, nothing really to particularly highlight here, except, like I say, you might want to consider whether you want repairs or camo to be a priority. Equipment, again, probably nothing surprising here. You're a medium tank, so you of course have a mobility slot as your booster slot, which is a little bit awkward because, truth be told, you're probably not going to use it much. I've got vertical stabilizers, coated optics, and a gun rammer, and that's just a pretty decent, I think, all-round setup. One thing you might want to consider, I suppose, is if you end up with a very good view range, you might be able to ditch the coated optics and take vents instead, and then you could take advantage of the mobility slot. But let's be real here for a moment. Look at the mobility equipment. I don't think this tank needs a turbocharger. You've already got respectable top speed and whatnot. Well, an extra 10% of your horsepower would be nice, I suppose, but I don't think it's necessary. Improve rotation mechanism, you could make a case for it, but I don't really think it's necessary, and I think for the way that you tend to use this tank, I do think vertical stabilizers is a better choice. Grousers, again, you don't really need it, so then you're just left with vents as an all-round bit of kit to fill that mobility slot. So it's just one of those, you know, mobility slots on some medium tanks tend to not be used. And I would recommend this as a pretty good all-round bit of equipment for this tank. Ammunition, I carry 10 rounds of APCR on this tank. The APCR is very good, but I don't tend to use it all that much. Occasionally if it's necessary, but a lot of the time 160 pen is enough to get the job done. In terms of consumables, nothing really surprising here. First aid kit, repair kit, and fire extinguisher. Of course, some people will be looking at a tank and going, I want to take cola on it for the improvement to your crew skills, and you could do that. These days, as ever, I do recommend an automatic fire extinguisher instead of a manual one. The increased delay as of some patches ago on the manual fire extinguisher really hurt it, in my opinion, and the automatic one is just your friend. It's not as if you have to spend loads of money on this. consumable discounts you can take advantage of, and so many missions, say campaign missions or other types of missions that are now available in World of Tanks. Just vomit forth large repair kits, first aid kits, and automatic fire extinguishers at you. They're not that hard to come by without spending a lot of credits on them. So that would be my recommendation in terms of consumables. And that pretty much covers the equipment and crew skills and consumables for this. So we're just going now to have a look at some gameplay. First game then, and whilst these two games are top tier and bottom tier, that wasn't actually the reason I picked these specific two games to show you. I picked them more to showcase some of the strengths and weaknesses of this machine. So, our first game here, we're in an all tier 7, well, not an all tier 7 match, sorry, a tier 7 maximum match. So we've got tier 6s and tier 5s to shoot at. We're top tier, going to have a little bit of a punt there. And straight off the bat, you can see that the T20 is pretty mobile. Now, bearing in mind, we're here on, not El Haluf, El Haluf? El Haluf, it is El Haluf. And we are, we had a little bit of an incline to work with there, so we were going downhill ever so slightly. And we have managed to get up to earlier on we managed to get up to our top speed of about 55 kilometers an hour, which was nice. And now we're going to try and work these ridge positions over here. Now, bearing in mind, in this particular game, in case you hadn't noticed, there is no artillery, there are no SPGs. If there were, then this position would not be anywhere near as viable. Oh, that guy just got deleted. Because over to my left-hand side, where you can see the Hellcat sitting, that's where you want to go to be artillery safe. This position here, you are not artillery safe. But as there's no artillery in this game, it's fine. Now, we managed to put one shot there into that Panther before he just got absolutely wrecked. And we're just trying to put some shots into anyone else, really. Now, obviously, we're a top-tier tank here, so we do want to be applying some pressure where we can, but at the same time, you do need to be a little bit cautious because, as we mentioned previously, armour is not the sort of thing that the T20 does exceptionally well, and that's a KV2. 152mm HE round to the face is not the sort of thing we really want to be doing. So, ooh, that Hellcat took a big hit. So I actually auto-aimed the KV2 there with the intention of just poking out, taking a shot. You can see I do it there again. Like, this is not... I'm not going to necessarily reliably hit and penetrate that KV2. Ooh, that could have gone badly wrong. And you can see there, like, I've hit him 3 times there. Only penetrated him the once, but he hasn't managed to hit me. So you could argue poking out against KV2 was overly risky, but I felt that combination of gun depression and not taking a long time to aim the shot, I felt it was a risk worth taking, keeping an eye on the amount of hit points that both teams have, and you can see we're rather on the back foot here, and so I really felt that we needed to take advantage of that KV2 pushing, if we could, and do something about it. So we've done that, and we're now just going to head back to our base, because if you just have a quick look at the minimap, you can see the enemy team have successfully pushed up around the other flank of this map. Our team manages to even the scoreline up, but hit point wise, we're still over 1,000 hit points down, so this is not an even match. Now, you could argue we've killed more higher tiers on the enemy team, so that plays into our favour, and that's good. But the enemy team do still have a hit point advantage. So the point I'm trying to make is that you can't rely on just the kills alone to guide whether this is a close game or not. And these days, you know, now that we've got the hit points available just in the vanilla game client, you can see the total team hit points, you can judge that a bit more readily. So we're trying to defend our base here, trying to take advantage of these guys, but we're having some problems. Hello, Mr. P43. There we go, we managed to put a decent shot into him. As you know, our allies here have kind of died, but overall our team has managed to even the hit point deficit up a little bit, and we're only 140 hit points behind. Now, what was the point of this replay? So this replay showcased a couple of things. One, you got to see the mobility of the T20 as we got into position. Two, you got to see us using the gun depression a little bit, which is nice. Three, you get to see what 240 alpha damage looks like in a tier 7 match. But the real reason I wanted to show this game is because of the ending. Now, the purpose of these games in these reviews is not to showcase, oh my god, super duper awesome ace tanker carries, blah 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 blah. It's to show you more realistic games, usually still decent, so that you actually get to sit there and watch the tank do its stuff for a little bit. But yeah. And in this case, as you can see, whilst the scoreline did even up for a while, the scoreline's now very quickly going to go south, and it's not difficult to work out why. Our team continued to push round the other flank, straight into a bunch of enemy tank destroyers, and there's some nastiness that ends up happening to them. You could have predicted that was going to happen. It's not... You don't need a degree in military history to be able to see the possibility there. Oh, that was frustrating. Now, but it's this bit of the game that I really wanted to focus on, because you're going to see the gun misbehave a little bit. That was bad. And the reload on this gun. Remember, I mentioned in the garage, this thing has dubious DPM. That was a bad shot to take, and that was a lucky bounce, especially as the A46 is actually firing APCR. But you can see here that we have quite a long reload, if we're going to be honest, and our DPM is poor, and what that means in practice is if you find yourself in a situation where you are outnumbered and you need to shoot your way out of dodge, that's kind of difficult to do. Hello, Mr. T34. I just could not find the shot there. I didn't necessarily want to expose myself too much in order to take the shot, but I eventually come to the conclusion that I need to be whittling the hit points of these guys down, because if multiple enemy tanks come at me at once, I don't have the DPM to shoot my way out of that sort of situation. So I'm trying to get myself in a position where I can hopefully deal with these guys one at a time and make them think I'm going in a different direction and all of that good stuff. You can see, by the way, that our team that pushed on is now just roundly being dealt with. Hello, Mr. T34. So, another shot into him. It's another low damage roll, which is kind of annoying. This gun, of course, on average hits for 240. Our last few damage rolls have been 214 and 216, 223, 215. But anyway, we managed to put the shot in. We've lost our SU-152, so we are alone. This is a potential Kolobanov's game, but we'll see how that goes. T-34S is kind of panicking, which is fair enough, and we managed to finish him off. But that M10 just keeps putting shot after shot after shot into us. He managed to hit us 1, 2, 3... 4 times there, in the time it took us to potentially reload. And the gun fails and he puts another one in. Now, he's spamming APCR for some reason. He doesn't need to, but he is. And he's just able to put in multiple shots, and he's a tank that's 2 tiers lower than us, and we have to be really careful engaging him. Now, we managed to get him in the side. That was kind of what I was going for here. I wanted to catch him from an unexpected angle, and now the A46 is coming up behind me, so we need to finish off that guy. Again, you have to take them one at a time. I was hoping to maybe get a little ram on the A46, but it wasn't going to work. And then the T52 shows up, and at this point my hit points have been whittled so low that I just can't finish this game off. Like I said, you don't have the armor and you don't have the DPM to shoot your way out of those sorts of situations. The amount of APCR also that people shot at me, like, it doesn't make a difference because this tank has essentially no armor, but I just find it entertaining. If those light tanks were not engaging their brain at all, they would just, well, I'm not going to say not engaging their brain, but they decided they just wanted to face roll all over the 2 key, and it's their credits. That's fine, but I just found it a bit weird. Anyway, I think I've made my point. I'm going to show you another game now that's a slightly different situation. So there we go then, that game was obviously a loss. First class mastery on the defeat though, because we picked up a high caliber medal and therefore got heroic resistance. Along with that high caliber medal we also got fighter, duelist, fire for effect and bruiser, so an assortment of smaller medals, which is none too shabby. We finished second on our team by experience, and it would have been top by damage done. Shout out to the Hellcat on our team, 2,419 damage from him and 3 kills, good effort. We got 2,562 damage, 4 kills, 663 base experience, before you add in heroic resistance. Had we been able to maybe not have to engage multiple tanks at once and just whittle them down and trade single shot for single shot, maybe that would have gone better. Had I not been taken a little unawares by the rate of fire on that M10, maybe that would have gone better. But all in all, the enemy still had at that point 900 hit points, and they did come at us all at once. I'm not sure there was too much more in that situation we could have done. We just needed to do more damage earlier on, I suppose, but we weren't exactly playing passively, we were trying to get stuck in, so we gave that one a good go. But you got to see what happens when you're fighting multiple tanks in a machine with no armour and low DPM. Still managed to fire 20 shots though, overall, which is quite a few. 16 hits, 13 pens, bearing in mind a number of those shots were not super duper well aimed. For that damage count, we received 13 hits. Remember, this is not the sort of thing you should necessarily expect. These are from pretty low caliber guns. There's a lot of light tanks there, like tier 5 and tier 6 light tanks at the end. 11 penetrated, 2 didn't. 220 damage blocked by our armour. Our armour actually achieved something. Not much, but it achieved something. And that's the best you can really expect from that armour. Top tier, tier 5 light tanks shooting you, and you block the odd shot here or there. You know, it's miracle bounces that you get from this armour. 6 enemy vehicles damaged, 4 destroyed, 3.4 kilometres travelled, and you can see we made a respectable profit credit-wise. You know, you do 2,500 damage at tier 7 without firing premium rounds, and you will make a reasonable amount of credits. Even with a standard account, we had a premium account at the time from the Battle Pass, but even with a standard account, that would have been a 27,000 credit profit on a loss. As it was actually like 50,000 credits, and a reasonable amount of experience. So, there's the first game, highlighting mainly some of the weaknesses of the tank, I suppose. So, we were top tier, but showing you what it's like when, you know, you have dodgy DPM and poor armour. But we were top tier. Second game I've got for you, we are definitely not top tier, but the map and the situation, I suppose, lends itself more to us. Not that El Haluf is a bad map for that tank, it's not, but, well, you'll see when we get into the next game. So, second match then, and this is, as I mentioned, a tier 9 game. We're here on Westfield, which has a hilly region over in sort of around C3 that if you've got good gun depression you can take advantage of. And I tend to go up there on this map if I've got decent gun depression regardless of what tank I'm playing. Light tank, medium tank, heavy tank, top tier, bottom tier, mid tier, whatever, because you can actually do some good work from there. I've even tried this in a Dicamax. It didn't work very well in the Dicamax, I'll be honest. So maybe I should say any tank with decent gun depression and... oh, we missed. And a turret. And some view range helps. So we're going to have a decent impact, hopefully, in a tier 9 match. And this should, oh goodbye EBR, this should show some of the strengths of the T20, especially that gun depression and the alpha damage. The relatively high alpha damage meaning that you don't have to expose yourself very much in order to rack up a good amount of damage. If you hit for 240 each time, then you need to take half the number of shots that you would if you hit for 120, say. So you need to pop up and expose yourself for half the amount of time. Now I'm slightly oversimplifying that explanation just for the purposes of hello artillery, just for the purposes of convenience and trying to get my point across, but hopefully you see what I'm getting at. So, in a situation where we're not having to fight multiple enemy tanks at once, and we're not in a close range duel, and we're just using a ridgeline, and we're just slapping away with this 90mm gun, you can start racking up the damage in the T20 pretty quickly, if we're going to be honest, even though the DPM is not very good. Just trying to watch my side there because there's a Scorpion I might be able to take advantage of, and just trying to spot these guys as well. And what you can also see here, what you will be able to see in due course, is the view range of the T20 coming to the fore as well. Oh, we track him. You know, 390 base view range. Doesn't actually take that much to get yourself up to a pretty respectable view range indeed. So I've got coated optics, and you've seen my crew setup, and I have a fairly nice view range. You could definitely get it higher. Side of the turret on the E75, nah, couldn't quite make the shot. Even 10 degrees of gun depression there just wasn't quite enough. So we haven't really achieved a huge amount so far. We put a shot into the UDES, which is nice. I mean, that's a tier 9 tank right there, and we're shooting him in our little tier 7. Might take a blind shot here, I think, against that Scorpion. And we've got a little bit of assistance damage into the bargain. Ooh, that Scorpion had a bad day. He is done. And there's some tasty, tasty assistance damage. And can we shoot the side of that T29? Yeah, we can. To shoot the UDES there, I would have to have exposed a lot more of my tank, and I know there's tank destroyers in the background. We know about the SU, of course. And there's a good chance that there are more of them. There's a Slitzvang, and, you know, so it continues. So I figured taking a safe shot against the T29 was the preferable choice there. Don't want to get hit by the Slitzvang. Spot the enemy Super Hellcat to my right. And take a pot shot. Actually managed to hit another 237 damage roll there. I think that's the same as we got against the UDES earlier on. And suddenly we're in a situation where our team is up on damage by a bit over 1,000. The enemy tier 9 medium tank that you would really expect to be dominating this position with his gun depression, the UDES there is on 61 hit points, and he is not feeling comfortable. We've managed to get the Scorpion killed by spotting him. And, ooh, we spotted that T29 and he got slapped for a lot. He's now on 86 hit points. Can we take advantage to pick up the kill? Of course. We damage his track instead, but another contender enters the ring. Well, the friendly Scorpion actually takes out the T29, and there's a rather brave T34. And we're just going to take low-risk shots into his side, frankly, because why need expose ourselves too much and take a risk if we don't have to? There's a second. Tiger looks like he's going to try a similar thing. And if the T34 is going to worry about where the Tiger's at, then we're just going to go around the side. Oh, Scorpion's coming in as well. Trying not to get shot by this guy. But there we go. He is dead as well, and the scoreline is 7-2. E75 now. The UDES is dead, so can we get a shot into the E75? Trying to go for the track there, but, well, we damaged his track, but we didn't actually blow it off, which is slightly irritating. Scoreline is 8-3. We're almost 3,000 hit points better off in the enemy team. Still a couple of tank destroyers in the background though, and I see no reason to just hold down the W key and drive headlong into them, but it would be really nice to shift them, of course. So, poking up into this bush, can we spot anything? We have good view range, but ooh, someone else looks like they might have done the spotting there. We managed to put a shot into the side of that Slitzvang, and we're just going to move around now. If we can flank around these guys, we might be able to spot out the enemy, and ooh, we actually managed to track that S1 in the process. That SU-152 is having a bad day. He's dead. There we go. And, oh, there's another not another S1, that same S1, but we know he's on low health. So I'm loading a HE shell here. The thing with the S1 is that it's got that very highly sloped frontal armour, so you need, it's 30mm thick. So in order to overmatch the front of that tank, you would need a gun that is larger than 90mm caliber, and I've of course got a 90mm gun, so I couldn't overmatch the front of his tank, but on such little health, a 90mm HE round should do the job. Now, I'm going to make a bit of a pig's ear of this. I've still got the HE loaded, and we're going to see what we can do. I think I make a pig's ear of this anyway. And we're against a couple of Super Hellcats. Their armour is terrible. I figure that HE should do absolutely fine against these guys, right? That'd be tickety-boo. Do a lot of damage, move on. It's not a terrible idea, but it does have some problems. So the thing is, in this situation, because we've got quite a long reload, if the HE shell hits their tracks, or for whatever other reason doesn't penetrate because we don't have a nice clean flush shot, say, through their frontal armour, then we're sitting on a relatively long reload before we can load another shell. AP would be a more reliable play here. This is kind of greedy. Anyway, one of the Super Hellcats has been spotted down south. He is dead. He was the one on 4 kills. Our artillery finishes him off. There's the other Super Hellcat, and yeah, I get a bit unlucky there. I think you can argue quite reasonably. And we don't manage to reload before the guy dies, but we do manage to win the game and get some assistance out of that Super Hellcat at the end. And actually, considering we were bottom tier, that ended up being a pretty good result. So let's have a look at the stats for this one. So there we go, that ended up being enough for a first class mastery, spotter, 5 for effect, bruiser, and a Confederate medal. Pretty nice result for a tier 9 match in our little tier 7. Finished at the top of our team, as it turns out, by XP. 1,772 damage done, 1 kill, 1,216 base experience. Congratulations to the Scorpion on our team, over 4,000 damage from him, 3 kills, and over 1,200 base XP from him. And, well, if you look at how each team did and some of the players on each team, it doesn't take a genius to work out why we won. Our top player across the board, our team just did more damage. Interestingly, though, this wasn't one of those games that was really decided by the top tier tanks, or I guess you could argue perhaps it was, but decided by their lack of contribution. If we look at our team, the highest damaging tier 9 tank, remember this was a tier 9 match, was our Udez 16. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone there. Our Udez 16, who managed just over 1,500 damage, which is not great in a tier 9, especially top tier. For the enemy, it was their E75, who managed 1,500 damage, basically the same. So where are the other tier 9s? I mean, there were only 3 of them, let's be honest, and one of those was an artillery in each case. Just out of curiosity, where are they? So on our team, we also had, of course, the Moitian, however you pronounce it, who did nothing. He might have got caught out by artillery or something, at a guess. I don't know. And on the enemy team, of course, oh no, I missed the Udez on the enemy team. He did 1,700 damage, my apologies. But even so, the tier 9s just aren't doing the damage. You can't regularly be doing 1,700 damage, 1,500 damage in a tier 9 and expect to be winning loads and loads of games. The fact remains that most tier 9s have around 1,700 hit points and upwards. So really, in order to be carrying your weight, so to speak, you want to be looking to do, on average, I mean, 1,700 as a minimum. Really a bit more than that. But, I mean, it is what it is. Anyway, 16 shots fired, 12 hits, 7 pens, 2 splash damage, because reasons. 1,772 damage, as I mentioned, most of which from pretty close range. 1 hit received, it penetrated, whoop-de-doop. 3 enemy vehicles spotted, 8 damaged, 1 destroyed, 2,425 assistance damage, almost 3 kilometers travelled, and a reasonable profit there. You can see the numbers for yourself. So, there's the gameplay. Let's just round things off in the garage. So what are my thoughts on the T20 overall? Well, I've kind of alluded to some of this already, but let's just lay my cards on the table. I've bought, sold, rebought, resold, etc. this tank quite a lot of times. And the reason was I didn't really like it initially. Now, like I said, you can go back and sift through YouTube and you'll find some of my older videos. And you'll notice that I'm using a pauper equipment setup, which at the time you could do, you can't these days. So for those who don't know, that was Binos, Camo Net and Toolbox. And I did that because these were my early days. You know, if you're playing the game essentially free to play, this was the equipment that you could demount for free from different tanks and move it around and use it repeatedly. Not an optimal setup for the tank, but it's what I was using. And I tend to use it more for longer range stuff, and the problem is the gun just isn't reliable enough for that sort of thing. And this is a continuing theme with this tank. The gun it's fine, but it can be really quite frustrating to use. And because of the poor DPM, the poor reload, it means that when a shot doesn't connect and doesn't do damage, it's really frustrating, as you have to wait a relatively long time before you can fire again. And So I ended up selling it, and then I rebought it later to ace it, and then sold it again, and then rebought it for this review, blah 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 blah. I don't think this is a bad tank. In fact, all things considered, I actually think it's pretty decent. As I've mentioned before, it's kind of gone pretty much unchanged for a long time in this game, and it's fine. It doesn't need a radical change or anything like that. I am going to be keeping hold of it for now, but that's more because I currently have no shortage of American crews and no shortage of garage slots. You know, events at Christmas and things have just been puking forth garage slots at us. I have 35 vacant garage slots. What am I going to do with 35 garage slots? Well, I mean, I guess I'll gradually fill them, but I have no immediate need for the garage slot. So I'm going to keep this tank for now. I may not keep it long term, but I'll keep it for now. We'll see how it goes. A lot of people compare this thing to the Comet, which I think is a bit weird because they're different tanks and they play differently. And I don't think it's a good comparison. But anyway, it's not a bad tank. It's pretty decent, and to be honest, bit of a spoiler here, the American medium line in general I think is pretty nice, and a good line to learn your medium tank craft in. So if this looks interesting to you, why not go and pick the tank up and make up your own mind? With all that said and done, I'll stop waffling. I hope you guys enjoyed, possibly found it vaguely informative. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos. And as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.